Hi, I'm Laura. This is 24/7 English. Today, I'm going to talk about something important: how you can speak English better than ever before. If you've ever felt stuck, like no matter how much you study, speaking still feels hard, you're not alone. So many learners feel the same way, but here's the good news. You can improve, and it doesn't have to take years. In fact, with the right techniques, you can start speaking better right away. Chapter 1: The Start of the Journey. Have you ever wondered what separates fluent speakers from beginners? It's not that fluent speakers know all the words or never make mistakes. In fact, they make mistakes all the time. The real difference is confidence. Fluent speakers are confident in their ability to communicate, even when they don't know every word or grammar rule. They don't freeze when they forget a word. They keep going, and that's what makes them sound fluent. Imagine this. You're in a conversation, and the words just flow. You're not thinking about grammar, you're not hesitating, you're just speaking. That's the goal. But how do you get there? Let me share something that might surprise you. Small changes in how you practice can make a huge difference. You don't have to completely change your study routine. You don't need to learn thousands of new words. What you need are a few simple techniques that will help you speak with confidence. So what's the first step? It's building the foundation of fluency, and that starts with confidence. If you don't feel confident, it's hard to speak well. But confidence isn't something you're born with. It's something you build, and I'm going to show you how. Here's the truth. Anyone can speak better than they did before, no matter their current level. If you've struggled with English, or if you've been afraid to speak, this podcast is for you. We'll go step by step, breaking down the process into easy techniques that you can start using today. And by the end, you'll be speaking English more confidently than ever before. But before we dive into the techniques, let's talk about why confidence matters so much. When you're confident, you're not afraid to make mistakes. You speak freely, and even when you mess up, you learn from it. Every time you practice speaking, you're building not just your language skills, but also your confidence. Here's a quote that I love from Winston Churchill. "Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." This is especially true when it comes to speaking English. The more you speak, the more confident you become, and the more your fluency improves. Now, I know what you're thinking. But what if I don't feel confident yet? Don't worry, that's totally normal. Confidence comes from doing. The more you speak, the better you'll get, and the more confident you'll feel. Let me give you a small challenge to get started. Set a goal to speak English every day, even if it's just for 5 minutes. You can practice with a friend, a family member, or even by yourself. The key is to start speaking, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. Over the next chapters, we're going to break down exactly how you can build confidence and improve your speaking. We'll cover listening techniques, shadowing, repetition, and even some fun ways to practice. And remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about making progress. But there's a technique that will really help you take the first big step toward fluency. It's something that most learners overlook, but it's the secret to improving faster than you think. Chapter 2: The Power of Active Listening. Now that we've talked about building confidence, let's dive into the first key technique that will truly help you speak better: active listening. You might think that speaking fluently is all about talking, but here's the truth. You can't speak well unless you listen well. Listening is the foundation of fluency. Think about this. When you listen, you're not just hearing words, you're learning how sentences flow, how native speakers connect ideas, and how certain words are pronounced. When you master listening, you'll find that speaking becomes easier and more natural. It's like filling your brain with the right tools before you start building. But not just any listening will do. You need to practice active listening. This means really paying attention to what you hear. You don't just let the words pass by, you focus on them, break them down, and absorb how they're used. Here's an example. When you're listening to a podcast, a story, or even a conversation, pay attention to how the speaker is structuring their sentences. Are they using short phrases or long sentences? How do they pronounce certain words? How do they express their ideas? Active listening means noticing these details and learning from them. One of the best ways to practice active listening is through shadowing. Shadowing is a technique where you listen to a speaker and immediately repeat what they say. It's like being their shadow, following their words as closely as you can. This is a powerful way to improve both your listening and speaking at the same time. Here's how you can practice shadowing. 1. Choose a podcast or story. Pick something that's not too long or difficult. You can find great stories and podcasts for beginners on my YouTube channel. 2. Listen carefully. Start by listening to a short sentence or phrase. Pay attention to the speaker's rhythm, tone, and pronunciation. 3. Pause and repeat. As soon as the speaker finishes a sentence, pause the audio and repeat what they said, trying to match their speed and intonation. Keep going. Repeat this process for a few minutes each day. You'll notice that your pronunciation and fluency improve over time. Shadowing helps you get used to speaking without overthinking. You're not translating in your head. You're simply repeating what you hear, and this builds fluency naturally. But let me tell you something important. Don't worry about being perfect. When you're shadowing, you're going to make mistakes. Maybe you'll miss a word or pronounce something wrong. That's okay. The goal is not perfection. The goal is to get comfortable speaking without hesitation. The more you shadow, the more fluent you'll become. One of my students, Sarah, was really shy about speaking English. She was afraid of making mistakes, so she rarely spoke at all. I introduced her to shadowing, and it changed everything for her. She started practicing by repeating sentences from podcasts. At first, she struggled, but after a few weeks, she noticed that her sentences flowed more easily. Shadowing helped her build confidence, and soon she was speaking without fear. Here's a great quote by Stephen Harvey that fits perfectly here. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. Active listening teaches you to truly understand, and when you understand, speaking becomes easier. But here's where things get interesting. Active listening and shadowing are just the beginning. There's another technique that will help you take your fluency even further, and it's all about repetition. In the next chapter, I'll show you how repeating what you hear can make speaking English feel as natural as breathing. To Chapter 3. The Repetition Technique. We've already discussed the power of active listening and shadowing. Now let's move to a technique that may sound simple, but is incredibly effective. Repetition. You might wonder, why is repeating things so important? The answer is, repetition is how your brain learns to speak fluently, without hesitation. Think of it like this. When you repeat words and phrases, you're training your brain to remember them quickly. The more you repeat, the more natural the words feel, and eventually, you'll be able to say them without thinking. It's like when you learn to ride a bike or memorize a song. You did it over and over until it became second nature. Speaking English is no different. Here's something interesting. Fluency isn't just about knowing a lot of words. It's about being able to use the words you know quickly and easily. Repetition helps you get to that point where you don't have to stop and think about grammar or vocabulary. You just speak. Let me share a story about one of my students, Paul. Paul knew a lot of English words, but he often hesitated when speaking because he had to think about what to say. I introduced him to the repetition technique. Every day, Paul would take 5 common phrases in English and repeat each one 5 times. It seemed boring at first, but after a week, Paul noticed something amazing. He could say those phrases easily and without hesitation. Repetition had worked its magic. So, how can you use repetition to improve your speaking? Let's break it down. 1. Repeat common phrases. Start by picking phrases you use often, like, "How are you?" or "What's your name?" Repeat these phrases out loud multiple times. This helps your brain get used to saying them quickly. You can do this while walking, cooking, or even in front of a mirror. The goal is to make these phrases feel natural. 2. Use the mirror technique. The mirror technique is a great way to practice repetition. Stand in front of a mirror and say the same sentence 5 times. Watch your mouth move, focus on your pronunciation, and get used to seeing yourself speak English. This technique not only improves your fluency, but also builds confidence because it's like practicing with someone else. 3. Shadowing plus repetition. Remember shadowing from Chapter 2? You can combine shadowing with repetition for double the impact. When you shadow a podcast or story, repeat the sentences as closely as you can to the original speaker. Then, after you've shadowed a few sentences, repeat those sentences again on your own. This is where the power of repetition really shines. It turns what you hear into what you can easily say. A quote by Aristotle explains this perfectly. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Repeating phrases, sentences, and words turns speaking English into a habit, and that habit is what leads to fluency. 4. Record yourself. One more way to practice repetition is by recording yourself. Choose a short passage from a podcast or a story. You can find plenty of stories on my YouTube channel. Read it aloud, record yourself speaking, then listen to the recording and repeat the sentences again. This not only helps with fluency, but also lets you hear your own progress over time. You'll notice that you sound more natural and fluent. 5. Small steps, big progress. You don't have to repeat long paragraphs or difficult phrases. Start small. Pick simple sentences like, I'm going to the store, I like reading books, or can you help me? And practice them daily. Small, consistent practice will lead to big improvements in your fluency. One thing to remember is that repetition doesn't mean being boring. Yes, you're repeating the same phrases, but you can mix it up by using different contexts. For example, practice the same sentence in the morning, then again in the evening, but this time pretend you're in a different situation, maybe talking to a friend or ordering food at a restaurant. There's another reason repetition is so powerful. It helps you build confidence. The more you repeat something, the more comfortable you feel saying it. And when you're comfortable, you speak without fear. The hesitation disappears, and your words start to flow naturally. But here's the exciting part. Repetition is just one piece of the puzzle. In the next chapter, we'll talk about how to make practice fun. You'll learn how to turn speaking English into something you look forward to every day instead of something that feels like hard work. Chapter 4. Making practice fun. Speaking English doesn't have to feel like a chore. In fact, the more fun you have while practicing, the faster you'll improve. When learning is enjoyable, you naturally want to do it more often. This chapter is all about turning your English practice into something you look forward to every day. Imagine this. Instead of forcing yourself to sit down and study, you actually enjoy speaking English. It's not about studying grammar rules or memorizing words. It's about having fun and feeling excited to use what you've learned. But how do you make practice fun? Let's explore a few techniques that will turn your speaking practice into an activity you love. 1. Role-playing. Step into real conversations. One of the best ways to make speaking English fun is through role-playing. This is where you act out different situations as if you're really there. You can pretend to be ordering coffee at a cafe, having a job interview, or meeting new friends at a party. By role-playing, you're practicing real-life conversations in a low-pressure, enjoyable way. Here's how you can start. Pick a situation. Think of a common situation where you might need to speak English, like asking for directions or ordering food. Create a dialogue. Write down a few sentences that you might need to say in that situation. Act it out. Either do this alone or with a friend. Pretend you're in the actual place and use the sentences you've prepared. The great thing about role-playing is that it helps you get comfortable with everyday phrases and situations. Plus, it feels more like acting than studying, so it's much more enjoyable. One of my students, Anna, used to feel bored practicing English by herself. I introduced her to role-playing, and suddenly her practice sessions became more exciting. She would imagine herself traveling, ordering food, and meeting new people, all while practicing English. Over time, her speaking skills improved, and she didn't even realize she was studying. 2. Talk about what you love. Another way to make practice fun is by talking about your passions. Think about something you love, whether it's a hobby, a sport, a favorite movie, or a book. When you talk about things that interest you, the words come more easily, and you're more motivated to keep speaking. For example, if you love cooking, try talking about your favorite recipes in English. Describe how to make your favorite dish, or pretend you're teaching someone how to cook. The key is to pick a topic that excites you so you'll feel more engaged while practicing. Here's a great quote by Albert Einstein. "Creativity is intelligence having fun." When you practice speaking about things you love, you're using your creativity, and that makes the process more enjoyable and effective. 3. Play speaking games. Who said language learning can't be a game? There are lots of speaking games you can play either by yourself or with a partner. These games challenge you to think and speak in English, but in a fun and light-hearted way. Here are a few examples. 20 questions. Think of an object, and your partner has to ask yes/no questions to figure it out. Let me know if you'd like more changes or further assistance. What is it? If you're practicing alone, switch roles after every question. Charades. Act out a word or phrase in English without speaking, and your partner has to guess what it is. Speaking challenges. Set a timer for 1 minute and see how long you can talk about a specific topic without pausing. This helps with fluency and speed. These games force you to think quickly and speak without overthinking, and because they're fun, you'll be motivated to keep practicing. 4. Practice with podcasts and stories. Another way to keep practice fun is by using podcasts and stories. Listening to stories and podcasts not only improves your listening skills, but it also gives you great material to talk about. After listening, try summarizing the story in your own words or discuss it with a friend. You can find many great stories and podcasts on my YouTube channel, which are designed to help learners like you improve their English. Choose a topic that interests you, listen to the story, and then practice speaking about it. This way, you're learning from engaging content while practicing your speaking skills. One of my students, Tom, struggled with staying motivated to practice speaking, but once he started listening to podcasts about his favorite topics, like technology and travel, he found that speaking about them came naturally. He would listen to an episode, then practice explaining it to himself or others, which made his practice both effective and enjoyable. 5. Change your environment. Sometimes, a change in your environment can make practice more exciting. Instead of sitting at a desk, try practicing in different places. Go for a walk and describe what you see in English. Sit in a cafe and pretend you're having a conversation with the barista. The idea is to bring your practice into the real world. By changing where you practice, you keep things fresh and interesting. Plus, practicing in real-life environments helps you get comfortable speaking English in everyday situations. 6. Celebrate your progress. Don't forget to celebrate your wins, no matter how small. Did you speak in English for 5 minutes without stopping? Did you successfully role-play a conversation? Celebrate that. Recognizing your progress is a great way to stay motivated and keep practicing. A famous quote by B.F. Skinner says, "A person who feels appreciated will always do more than what is expected." This applies to yourself as well. The more you appreciate your own progress, the more motivated you'll be to keep improving. Now, you might be thinking, this all sounds great, but what if I hit a wall? What if I feel stuck? Don't worry, that's completely normal. In the next chapter, we'll talk about breaking through those speaking blocks and how to keep moving forward, even when it feels tough. Chapter 5. Breaking Through. Speaking blocks. So far, you've learned how to make English practice fun with role-playing, speaking games, and podcasts. But what happens when you feel stuck? When the words just don't come out, and you're afraid of making mistakes? These speaking blocks are normal, and every learner experiences them. The key is to understand how to break through them. Let's start by recognizing one thing. Making mistakes is part of the learning process. One of the biggest reasons people feel blocked is the fear of saying something wrong. But here's a secret. Even native speakers make mistakes. What matters is that you keep speaking. The more you speak, the more confident you'll become, and the easier it will be to push through those blocks. 1. Overcome the fear of mistakes. Imagine you're having a conversation, and suddenly you forget a word or say something wrong. What do? Most people freeze up or stop speaking entirely. But here's what you should do instead. Keep talking. Don't worry about getting every word right. Just focus on communicating your message. If you can't remember a word, try to describe it in another way. The important thing is to keep the conversation going. Let me tell you about one of my students, Daniel. He was so worried about making mistakes that he would freeze whenever he tried to speak English. I told him that mistakes are not failures. They're opportunities to learn. We worked on building his confidence by practicing simple conversations, and I encouraged him to keep speaking even when he wasn't sure of the right words. Over time, Daniel learned that the more he spoke, the more his confidence grew, and the less those mistakes bothered him. There's a famous quote by Henry Ford that says, "Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently." Every time you make a mistake, you're learning how to speak better the next time. 2. Use self-talk to break through. When you don't have anyone to practice with, self-talk can be your best tool for breaking through speaking blocks. This technique is simple but powerful. All you have to do is talk to yourself in English out loud, as if you're having a conversation. You can do this while doing daily tasks like cooking, walking, or getting ready for bed. Here's how self-talk works. Describe your day. Talk about what you did today, where you went, or what you plan to do tomorrow. Ask yourself questions. For example, what do I want to eat for dinner? And then answer in English. Practice situations. Imagine you're at a restaurant or meeting someone new. Practice what you would say. One of my students, Sophie, felt blocked because she didn't have a speaking partner. I introduced her to self-talk, and she started practicing English every day while she was doing her morning routine. Over time, Sophie noticed that her confidence grew and speaking English felt more natural. 3. Use shadowing to push through. We've already talked about shadowing in previous chapters, but it's such an effective technique that it deserves a mention here too. When you feel stuck, shadowing can help you keep moving forward. By listening to a podcast or story and repeating what the speaker says, you're practicing real conversation patterns without the pressure of coming up with your own sentences. Start with short, simple sentences and work your way up to longer conversations. Shadowing helps you build fluency because you're practicing both listening and speaking at the same time. Plus, it helps you break through speaking blocks by giving you the words and phrases you need to keep talking. Remember, you can find plenty of stories and podcasts to shadow on my YouTube channel. These are great for practicing because they're designed for beginners and will help you build fluency step by step. 4. Role play challenging situations. Another great way to break through speaking blocks is by role-playing difficult conversations. Think about the situations that make you feel the most nervous. Maybe it's giving directions, having a job interview, or talking about a complicated topic. Practice these situations with role-playing until they become easier. For example, if you're nervous about giving a presentation in English, practice giving that presentation out loud to yourself. Or, if you're worried about having a conversation with a native speaker, role-play that situation in your head. The more you practice these challenging scenarios, the more confident you'll feel when they happen in real life. 5. Stay positive and persistent. Finally, breaking through speaking blocks requires a positive mindset. It's easy to get frustrated when things don't go perfectly, but remember this: progress is more important than perfection. Every time you speak, you're getting better, even if it doesn't feel like it. Celebrate the small wins, like successfully completing a conversation or learning a new phrase. Here's a quote from Walt Disney that sums it up perfectly. The difference between winning and losing is most often not quitting. If you keep practicing, even when it feels hard, you'll break through those speaking blocks and become a more fluent, confident speaker. 6. Practice in real-life situations. One final way to break through speaking blocks is to practice speaking in real-life situations. Go to places where you can use English, cafes, markets, or even online language exchanges. The more you practice in real-world settings, the easier it becomes to push past the fear and hesitation. One of the best ways to practice in real life is by talking to native speakers. But what if you don't know any native speakers? Don't worry. There are plenty of online platforms where you can connect with people who want to practice English. And remember, they're learning too, so there's no need to feel embarrassed about making mistakes. Breaking through speaking blocks isn't about never making mistakes. It's about keeping going, even when it feels tough. With techniques like self-talk, shadowing, role-playing, and staying positive, you can overcome those moments of hesitation and start speaking more confidently. Chapter 6. Finding Speaking Partners. By now, you've learned how to break through speaking blocks with techniques like self-talk, shadowing, and role-playing. But what if you want to take your fluency even further? One of the best ways to do this is by practicing with speaking partners. Finding someone to speak English with, whether online or in person, can make a huge difference in your progress. But you might be thinking, what if I don't have anyone around me who speaks English? Conclusion. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this story added some excitement to your English learning journey. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with friends, and subscribe to 24/7 English for more fun and educational content. Your support and feedback inspire me to create even better stories for you. Stay tuned. More exciting stories are coming soon to make learning English easy and enjoyable. Keep practicing and have a wonderful day.